All right, I guess we will get started. Hi, Joe. Hi, Grace.
Hello,
Both muted. They're both muted.
Well,
I'm not muted. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes. Okay, all right.
Julie's muted.
Well, everything I always wanted to know, no. What things that that they didn't teach me in Sunday school, or I never learned that in Sunday school, or whatever. We started this last year, and with I tried to. My point was and is that for many of us, we learn most of what we retain about Jewish history, Jewish thinking, Jewish belief, practice, traditions, on. We learn most of that as in our earlier days, in children, or as children. And the answer when we say, well, why are we doing this, or why do they do that, or where did this come from, is either it's tradition, it's the Reb Tevye answer, or it's too complicated to explain to you now, or you'll learn it when you grow up, or the more typical is because I said so. Whether that's, well, rabbis are parents, okay, okay, so it could be because the rabbi said so, and not just because the parent said so. And so there are so many things I believe about this beautiful religion and community that is ours, that we should be looking at as adults, with maturity and with experience. And that doesn't mean to pop holes or to find the inconsistencies or the incongruities or whatever and try to debunk anything. It means to try to understand things in a more sophisticated and more appreciative and respectful way. So if I remember the example, and I remember first talking about it last year, or last spring, right before Purim, and I remember telling you the story of how I related this to a class of 10th and 11th graders who are now. Well, the one girl involved is now she's in her residency after medical school. So, okay. But so I said, okay, you're old enough now, you're mature, you're 16, 17 years old. We're going to look at the Purim story, the story of Esther and King Ahasuerus and whatever. We're going to look at it with a little more mature eye, if you will. And we talked about Jewish identity. And we talked about, was it appropriate for Esther, whose real name is Hadassah? Was it appropriate for her to hide her Jewish identity and background from the king, or should she have told him, of her background right away? And what did that mean? And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we're going through the whole story. And I said, and so what do you remember about the king and Esther? How did she get to be queen? And they said, well, when we did the little Purim play at Sunday school, it was like a beauty contest, right? And all the girls dressed up as and who would be the prettiest and kind of thing. And they walked in front of whoever was actually the rabbi emeritus who was 85 years old at the time. We had him sitting in a chair of the throne, stroking his beard, kind of thing. And all the little girls walked in front of him, and he said, "That's one, that's one, that's one." Kind of, and that was their memory of the story of how King Ahasuerus chose Queen Esther. But we open up the scroll of Esther, and you read it, and where they start talking about all the training that needed to go into someone who wished to be in the king's harem. Okay, and had to go through special training, and had to even be, examined and take a final exam before being presented to the king. And you can kind of, well, let's see, what do you think the examination was in? Okay, what kind of special skills were involved? And I remember with these 10th and 11th graders, all the eyes started, open up. Whoa, this is really quite a story, right? And then of course the kicker is that, and what was the criteria for Queen Esther, and even after she became queen, to be able to come into the king's presence? What had to happen? He had to raise his royal scepter. Okay, and so we started thinking, okay, what could that possibly mean? That she could only come into his presence when the royal scepter was raised. And here's this one girl, Elizabeth was her name. Like I say, she's now in doing a residency in psychiatry or something like that. Because and she said, "Wait a minute, Rabbi, really? That's what the scepter was? Really? So anyway, so we tell the story one way, or we learn the story, we remember the story from when we were first introduced to it. But then there are other ways. There may not be one, I can't say which one is correct, but certainly there are more adult ways to looking at things that perhaps open our minds, open our eyes, and open our minds to a different understanding and different perspective of whether it's a story, whether it's a practice, whether it's a custom, whether it's a ceremony, whatever it might be. And so last year we did a couple of sessions on God concepts. It's one thing to say, okay, well, God is like our grandfather, except wait a minute, now we're the age of the grandparents, right? And do we really still consider ourselves to be godlike? Whatever, but different God concepts, and even that there's a strong strain in Jewish tradition of those who rejected God and said, no, we don't believe in a God, and whatever. We're certainly not going to teach that in Sunday school, right? So, but it is a viable and valid approach. So that what I was suggesting to you was that Judaism doesn't say you must believe in God, is that Judaism says you must have a belief about God. You have to be willing to have some kind of, to understand and accept some kind of role for God, or not, that the God does not play in your life. You have to grapple with that. That's what Israel means. Yisrael means to grapple or to wrestle with God. So we talked about God concepts. We talked about various customs and ceremonies and practices in the what I call the womb to tomb, in the life cycle, right? Of where this comes from, where that comes from, that, and the difference between the Ashkenazi and the Sephardi way of approaching it, and why it may be, and things like that, and some background to some of the holidays, and some of those things. That's what we did last year. I had said we never got there because that's my typical pattern of always talking too long. But I had said that I certainly wanted to know the group, and I'm looking both at the screen on the television as well as the people who are here. If there are questions, I don't necessarily have the answers right off the bat, but I would do the research to be able to address some kind of things, well, I've always wondered why we do this, or why we don't do this, or what's the best way to answer. I know that we talked about what happens after we die. And Judaism, doesn't give just one answer.
Right.
It gives many, many different answers. And then, of course, like, again, referring back to Reb Tevye, well, you know what? He's right. And you know what? You're right. Well, you're both right. How can you both be right? Well, you know what? You're right too. Kind of thing. So if you have 3 rabbis, there are 5 opinions. And it's not just true sitting around one table. It's true also over the thousands of years. And the case that I would make using the small letter R, okay? Judaism reforms itself. It's not that Judaism is based on reform, but we reform, we progress, we adapt. And whereas, here's where sometimes I get into a little bit of trouble, but that's okay. Whereas the ultra-Orthodox would say that their understanding of Judaism is the most authentic, okay? And that, like Reform Judaism, Conservative Judaism, Reconstructionist Judaism, Renewal Judaism, even Zionist Judaism, that those are all splinter groups that the ultra-Orthodox, they would maintain is the most traditional and the most authentic. I would maintain, no, on the contrary, the movements that reform and that change and that modify Judaism from what has been going from tradition, whether it's one generation or whether it's 2,000 years, that Judaism is always reforming and adapting and changing. Look, in our lifetimes, the difference in the role of women. Okay, in what's accepted in the contemporary Jewish world, except for the ultra-Orthodox. And there's no question, I've made this statement in any number of situations, there's no question. The people, that's you sitting around the table, you sitting up on the, in the Zoom, whatever. The people are the ones who make Judaism alive and relevant and sustainable, etc. Not the rabbis. The people are the ones going back to the days of Moses. The people are the ones who say, wait a minute, we're encountering this particular kind of question, this particular kind of problem. Okay, what does our religion, what does our God, what does our understanding of our humanity, what does it say to us so that we can find a meaningful response to the questions that we're asking, to the problems that we're encountering? It goes all the way back to, I'll use this simple example. Again, I apologize if it's repeating itself to some of you. Okay, so I think that in the Torah, the 10 Commandments appear twice, right? Okay. They appear in the book of Exodus at the time in the narrative, at the time that Moses leads the people. They've come through the Sea of Reeds. They sang Mi Chamocha, Agi. That's when they sang Mi Chamocha, right? Okay. They get to Mount Sinai. Moses goes up to the top of the mountain, and God gives them the 10 Commandments, comes down, and he breaks the commandments because he makes the tablets, because he sees that the people have made the golden calf, right? Okay. So, but that's the first time. Then the second time is 39 years and 8-9 months later, just before Moses is going to die, and just before they're going to cross over the Jordan River into the Promised Land. None of the people who are at Mount Sinai are still alive, except for Moses himself, Joshua, and Caleb. Those are the only 3 who, according to the Bible itself, those are the only 3 who were still alive from the time of 10 Commandments. So Moses is giving his farewell sermon, lasts for a month. Right? Moses, you think my sermons are long. Moses talks for a month, and he's repeating to people, and he's teaching him what he's reminding these people who didn't experience it. He's telling them what he remembers as best as he can remember it. He's 120 years old, right? As best as he can remember it, he's telling them what happened along the way during the 40 years of wandering and whatever. It gets to the point where he's saying, and I went up to God told me to come up to the top of the mountain, and God gave me these words. We call them the 10 Commandments. And I brought them back down, and yeah, there was a little bit of a problem at the bottom of the, but whatever. I want you to know these 10 Commandments. And the point is that there are differences between the Exodus version of the 10 Commandments and the Deuteronomy version of the 10 Commandments. Okay, like I said, Moses is 120 years old. You know, a little bit of, what do we call it? Some-timers, not all-timers, but, some-timers, sundowners. I don't know.
Except for CRS. Can't remember shit.
Can't remember. Doesn't call it that in the Torah. No. Okay, all right. But that's the way the tradition says that Moses, because he make a couple different words here. He changes the word from remember the Sabbath day to observe the Sabbath day. Is that such a big deal? It's not such a big deal. Okay, all right. But if you look carefully, you can also say that it's possible that the practices or the mores or the values of the Israelite people had changed a little bit in those 40 years. And the primary example is with the women or the wives. In the first set of the 10 Commandments, number 10 is, thou shalt not covet. That's the way we all learned it, right? Thou shalt not covet. Period. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor thy neighbor's ox, nor ass, nor male servant, female servant, anything that belongs to thy neighbor, right? Okay. In the Deuteronomy version, it's thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Period. Nor shalt thou covet. Okay, thou shalt not covet. Or actually, it's a different verb. Overly desire, whatever, thy neighbor's house and ox and ass and slave and whatever. In other words, the wife was no longer just a piece of property like the house or the ox or slave or whatever. Okay. Now, did Moses make that distinction on his own? Or have there been some experiences in the last 39 years and 8 months of people coming to him and saying, hey, Mo, there's something not right here. We don't like the way that this is playing out for the women. And we have examples of that along the way. And I'm making light of it, yes, but I think hopefully you get the idea that even in the times of Moses, there were subtle, sometimes major changes. Again, let's use the word reforms. One more example, Ricky, then I got you. Okay. All right. Abraham, Jacob, certainly, whatever. The patriarchs whom we revere all had more than one wife, right? Polygamous society. Obviously, that was okay with God, right? Or God would have stopped it, right? But or said one of the commandments is thou shalt not have more than one wife. But God chose not to say that. So obviously it was okay. And obviously, over the hundreds of years, the Jewish people or the Israelite people, most likely the women rather than the men, but that's a different way of looking at it, okay? Said to the rabbis, that's not right. Why should the men be entitled to more than one wife, but not the women? Well, because we need to know who's the father, if there are children, so we know exactly which tribe they belong to, and whatever. I said, but still, that's not right. And so a little more than 1,000 years ago, the rabbis got together, led by one particular rabbi named Gershom, and said, change, reform, it's called a takana, it's an injunction. Heretofore, for the next 1,000 years, human beings can't make it on the same level as God would do. But for the next 1,000 years, polygamy is banned. No more polygamy, only one wife. Because that's the way that the people want to observe it. So whether it's those examples, whether it's what's happening in the present day with women's roles, with same-sex marriage, well, whatever, who is a Jew, any of those kinds of questions. I would maintain, and that's what we did last year also, is look at some of these things. Where did they originally come from? The who was a Jew question was what we spent a lot of time on what's involved in conversion, what's involved with one parent or both parents, neither parent is Jewish, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And again, that's not something that we grappled with in Sunday school necessarily, but it is part of our world today when we look at who we are, when we look at our children and their spouses, and we look at our grandchildren and what will happen with them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Yes, Rick.
2 points.
Please.
And I think it's Kale, the history of the Jews. But the word I use where you keep saying we reform and having a problem with the word because it has other connotations.
Yeah.
When I finished reading that book, I said the Jews reinvent themselves.
Yes.
Based on their culture,
Sure.
So I find reinvent is a better
Good. Right.
But then I'm now rereading The Gift of the Jews. Thomas, whatever. Anyway, whoever. Gale? No. He also wrote about the Irish, but anyway.
Right. And
I'm only in the second.
Cahill, Cahill, right.
And I'm not even halfway through, but that twist that you just discussed with the period after women. Prior to the Jews, it's one of the first gifts of the Jews. But before life was a circle, the Sumerians had a very different focus. There was no individuality because life just was circling, we just bodied around. And that the Jews were the ones that finally got to the concept of straight line history. There's a future, there's a past, and that's when the individual person had, there was some individuality about the people.
Right.
And that's when the women could. In the previous, the Sumerians, the Epic of Gilgamesh and stuff, there wasn't that. So that was one of the gifts of the Jews.
Yes.
And I can't wait. I want to keep going because I read this book like 20 years ago or whatever, and it's fun to reread a book that has so much.
I just talked about it, I think, on Rosh Hashanah also.
Did you think of the Jews?
I think so.
Okay, well, I'm going to have it and I'm going to suggest that the book, but
Gotcha. Good.
But
Okay. All right. So anyway, that's all background. Took a half an hour for that, but I was hoping that Amy Storer was going to come, because she's the one who specifically had asked about this. This is what I prepared to work on today. I think I'm still going to do it because it's unless we're recorded, right?
Yeah.
So she can watch
It's
if she
recorded.
wants. It's recording. Okay. So Amy can watch it if she wants to afterwards. Okay. Because she asked about some of this. And the reality is, we can do this for a while, and then I don't know about you, but as horrible as the situation in Israel is, and it certainly needs our attention and needs our focus, but I need to take a break from it. I don't know about you. I mean, every time I open up my, the emails or Facebook, there's another message from, and did you know that so and so was killed and whatever, and all the horror from both sides. So there will certainly be the opportunity to talk about it. And after I do this piece, if we still have a little time, if you have questions, I'll try to answer. But who knows what gematria is? What's gematria?
Gematria is assigning numerical values to the letters of the Hebrew alphabet.
Right.
And by playing games with numbers, they come up with a new meaning to the same meaning.
Yeah, right. Okay, so gematria, which actually comes from it's taking the Greek word, and I'm all Greek to me, right? So I don't know exactly how to pronounce the Greek word for geometry.
Gematria, wouldn't the word grammar come out of that?
No.
Oh.
No.
Just
Not that I know of. No, it comes from the Greek word, which I don't know how to pronounce,
okay.
but the Greek word for geometry. So some of the letters are the same letters, the gamma, I don't know, beta, whatever. Okay, all right. And then it's put into Hebrew letters and the Hebrew form. Like my Hebrew students, of course, are now experts on all of this. That in order to be a legitimate Hebrew word, it has to have a 3-letter base. Okay? The 3-letter Hebrew 3 consonants. So sometimes they will take a different letter, but when we were joking around, like psychologia. Okay, that's psychology, right? Okay, yeah. We were talking about how do you know whether to pronounce the P or don't pronounce the P? And I said, well, in Hebrew you do pronounce the P, psychologia. But so if it's a foreign word, you don't necessarily have to look for those 3-letter roots. I don't know what the 3 letters of psychologia would be. Probably the L, the G, something like that. Right. No, it wouldn't be that. It wouldn't be that. Definitely wouldn't be the sign. Yeah, definitely wouldn't be the sign. So the same thing with gematria. So because I was trying to figure out, is there some Jewish or Hebrew interpretation to the word itself? Okay, but apparently not. I did all kinds of research looking for it, and the best that I could find out is that it's based on the Greek word geometry, okay, which has to do with playing with the shapes, identifying the shapes. And so early on in the use of gematria, as far as we know, even in Hebrew, they were trying to do a lot of numbers games, okay, with geometric figures. Like they do, I'll give you some examples. They do things of, well, this number's squared, okay? Or this, if you make a triangle with this number at the top and this number over here and this number over here, and then if you go this way, if you're adding this way, it means one thing, but if you're adding it this way or if you're subtracting, it means something else. And that's the way that the practice first. So geometry or geometric symbols or something made sense.
But is it an isosceles triangle?
Or equilateral.
My Hebrew's pretty good, but I don't know how to say isosceles. Anyway, so but the earliest forms of what we would now put in that category of gematria seem to be related to word or numbers games, like I was describing. What happens at the very earliest days of, and we will not spend a lot of time on this because it's just not my thing. In the earliest days of Kabbalah is Jewish mysticism. All right? So gematria kind of came to be associated with Jewish mysticism and finding mystical and spiritual meaning and hidden insights in the numbers. I'll give you a couple examples of it. Of the numbers, like I said, that like what Ricky said, in the numbers of each letter and each word. So simply, even if you don't know the entire alphabet, but okay, I was going to make a chart and put it up there, but all right, well, which we can do if we have to. All right, so Aleph is
1,
Bet is
2,
Gimel,
3,
Daled,
4,
Hey,
5,
Vav,
6,
Zion,
7,
Het,
8,
Tet,
9,
Yud,
10.
10. Okay. Now, how would you do 11?
A 10 and a 1.
A 10 and a 1. Rather
Yeah, we do.
than the next Hebrew letter, which is Kaf. Rather than making Kaf 11, okay, they would say if you're going to do 11, you do a 10 and a 1. You could, but somebody's going to come along and say, well, like I said, 3 rabbis, 5 opinions. Why can't I do 9 and 2? Why can't I do 8 and 3?
No,
Why can't I do 5 and 6? And the answer is, well, you can.
Right.
If you can find, and look and find with a smile on your face or with deep, what they call kavanah, with deep intent, intent direction of your mind. If you can find, this is what I want to play with. If you can find a way to make 8 and 3 a better way of making 11.
Sounds like Jewish
Or-
Sudoku.
Huh?
Sounds like
Sudoku.
Jewish Sudoku.
Maybe I don't do Sudoku, so maybe I don't know. Okay, so maybe
Yeah, but everything over
right.
there,
Okay,
9, I don't know.
so 12 would be 10 and 2, or
8 and 4.
8
9 and 3.
8 and 4,
Yeah.
or 6 and 6.
Huh.
Okay, all right, and then okay, you get the idea. But going back to the alphabet,
But didn't
so-
they have a value for 20? I mean.
yes, yeah,
so
that's what I'm
10,
getting
then
back to.
20, then-
Right, okay, so if we got to Tet is 9, Yud is 10, Kaf is 20,
Okay,
Wow.
yeah.
okay, then Lamed is 30, Mem is 40, Nun is 50, Samach is 60, Ayin is 70, Pei is 80, Tzadi is 90, Kuf is 100,
Mhm.
Kuf, we still have 3 letters left. Okay, we don't go to 101, we don't go to 110, we go to 200. All right, Resh is 200, Shin is 300, Top is 400.
Isn't that kind of almost, or I was gonna say, doesn't that follow the Roman, but more the Roman follow it, where the letters have values, the X being 10,
Yeah,
L
yeah,
being 50.
yeah, I don't- right,
and C being 100,
right,
the
right.
letters.
Yes, exactly, exactly. But I'm not aware of getting into any kind of word association
No,
with the Roman numerals.
but it's hell doing arithmetic in Roman numerals.
True. Okay. So like I said, started with geometric shapes, right? Then in the earliest days of what becomes Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism, but there were strains of, I'm not even sure what the right word is, not necessarily mysticism, but different kinds of interpretation, especially like the biblical commentators, the commentators on the Torah, or even into the Talmud and later, but most especially in the Torah, that we're trying to find the hidden meanings of certain words. And again, I'll give you some examples to play with this, but I want to go in a different direction first. Okay, so this is kind of a sidebar, and we may have touched on this last time, but this is now, and we'll do a lot more of this during the year with adult education, with the Torah project kind of thing. Now, whether the scribe is going to be talking about it, I think he will talk about it a little bit on Monday, but certainly there'll be the opportunity during the year to talk about it. There are traditionally 4 ways of interpreting Torah. Okay, and Torah primarily as what we have in the Ark as the scroll, the 5 books of Moses, but also Torah meaning the rest of the Bible and sacred literature, if you will. Okay, but mostly for the Torah. Okay, there are 4 ways of looking at it, and the easy way, or the mnemonic. You know what a mnemonic is? All right, where you use the letters, like the first letters of a word to make either make a whole, a whole.
You need an Enigma machine.
Yeah, something like that, right? Yeah, it's easy to remember that word or that phrase or something that help to, it's been a long time since any of us have had to do a final exam in college, right? Where had to have the mnemonic. Oh, what's that list? Oh yeah, da 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 da. Anyway, so the mnemonic for the 4 ways to understand Torah is paradise, right? Which in Hebrew is pardes. Okay, pardes. So a pa, a ra, a da, and a sa, and a samach. Okay, pardes or paradise. So pardes, the first is what they call in Hebrews is the pshat. That's the simplest, basic level. This is what the text says. Whether you accept it or not, but this is, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth being unformed and void, and darkness upon the face of the deep. And that's the way the world and the universe came into being. Okay, that's the pshat. That's the simple form, the way that the text says it. Okay, the resh, or the r from paradise, from pardes, is remez, is a hint. So there's a hint of something else in here. You have to kind of look a little bit deeper and see what is that hinting with. Now, Bereshit bara Elohim, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Okay, so what is being hinted at if heavens were created earlier than earth? So I guess heaven is closer to God. Okay, wouldn't God be creating things that are closer to God rather than a little bit farther away? Is that the hint? Or maybe God couldn't create the earth until the heavens were created first? There needed to be you see what I'm saying? It just doesn't give the answers. It just gives the hints of the way that you can start to think or study or explore, or as one of my professors used to say, oh, hi, Amy.
I was gonna
I'm doing all this. This is all about gematria. This is all for you. Okay, so as one of my professors, Eugene Mahali, used to say, this is the way that you probe the text. He was Hungarian. It was pronounced as probe. Okay, so anyway, so there's the pshat, there's the remez, there's the simple way, there's the hint, okay? Then there's the Dalet is for drash. You may have heard that Hebrew or Yiddish word is to seek, okay, to explore. And by that, it's the same source for the Hebrew, for the text of the Midrash, okay? That's to try to find the, what's the word? The lesson. You know, it's like if it's a fable, there's a Aesop's fables. There's a lesson. What's the moral of the story, kind of thing. Okay, what's the teaching? After all, Torah means teaching, right? So the drash is what's being taught here. Okay, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Okay, what's the lesson? What's the bottom line lesson? Is that God is the creator with a capital C. All right, creatio ex nihilo, creation from nothing. Before God, there was nothing else. That's why the Hebrew begins with the letter bet for Bereshit, because the letter bet, for those of you who are Hebrew students, knows that it's closed off on the front. There's nothing before it. There was nothing before God creating the heaven and the earth. Okay, so that's what, because God could have chosen to begin the Torah with whichever letter God chose, but specifically chose the bet because there's the symbol there that's closed off. Nothing else. Nothing was there before there. Creatio ex nihilo, creation from nothing. Okay, and then the last one of paradise, the fourth, is sod, which is secret. Aha. And back to my thing about didn't learn it in Sunday school. It's because the lesson is you're not supposed to study this until you're at least 35 years old.
Oh, I
I
thought
thought it was 40.
Why?
Oh.
I was 40.
They told you 40?
Yes.
No, they told us 35. Must be male, female. Must be male, female. Men can start at 35.
No.
Women.
No. 40 and married and.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
There are-
What converted me was younger than 40.
Aha.
And I would occasionally spout something, one of his vet wrote or something. And he said, "You're not supposed to know that." And I said, "You're not supposed to know that either."
Yeah,
Because she was 40 yet.
Okay. I think it was originally 35, and then with inflation or
It
became-
longer.
it became right, longer.
Longer.
Well, whatever. Anyway, so there are those four, and sod, which is the secret, which is the secretive kind of thing, is what leads to the gematria
And Kabbalah.
and Kabbalah and all of these. So while you have maybe a Rashi, who's the most famous of the biblical commentators, who would say, okay, let me give you, all right. So Rashi would say, all right, everybody remember the Via Hafta, right? You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. So set these words which I command you this day. Write them upon the doorposts of your house, and upon your, okay, right, and again, the totafot beinenecha is frontlets between your eyes. Okay, I'm quoting Rashi. I haven't the faintest idea what frontlets are, what totafot are. Okay, and Rashi was fluent in Hebrew, Arabic, and French. Okay, and so I have the faintest idea what they are. So Rashi's primary, and I'm very much simplifying, but Rashi's thing is to identify, to translate, to clarify. Okay, and what Rashi will do is to say, oh, I don't know what totafot are, but here are the three other places where it's used, where that word is used, maybe even in the singular rather than the plural, whatever it is, but here are the three other, and this is, don't forget, this is long before Google search or or anything like that. He just knew it all by heart. So he would give those quotes. So there are biblical interpretations or commentators like Rashi who helps us clarify, but in a very, very specific and academic way. Okay. Then there are others, Ibn Ezra, Maimonides, who try to add a little different of a philosophic tone, if you will. And then there are those who play the numbers game, or in a number of different ways. There are some who will say, okay, if you're counting, we are now up to 703 words in this particular paragraph or this particular Torah portion, whatever, okay? And which makes it the third longest portion in the whole book of the and you get to the end of the book of Genesis, and it says, well, this is the end of the book of Genesis, which composed 48 chapters, and the 48 chapters included this number of sentences and included this number of, okay, but again, this is long before Google search, but that's the way that some of them felt drawn to find fascination and inspiration in Torah. And you had some that like to approach it with this numbers game. Okay, so we're gonna 15-20 minutes we're gonna play numbers game here. Okay, Amy's question originally to me was, how does 18 get to be high or get to mean life? Okay, all right, well, the number 10 is the Hebrew letter Yud, and the number 8 is the Hebrew letter Chet. Okay, 10 plus 8 equals 18. And now you have a choice. You can pronounce it Yif if you think life is Yif, or you can pronounce it Chai. All right, put the Chet first, put the 8 first. Put the 8 first, 8 plus 10. Okay, the letter Chet, and then the letter Yud. And to note, you can't just pronounce CHY, right? So you got to add a vowel in there somewhere. And they chose the vowel, the ah vowel, to make it Chai, which in the plural is Chaim, but we're not going to deal with that one yet. All right, okay,
What's the number for Haim?
well, we'll figure it out. I got my cheat sheet here. If she's got a calculator there, we'll have a little bit of fun. Have a little bit of fun with it. Okay, so that's how they come up. That's how they come up with it. Okay, they could have said, wait a minute, because there are a couple different ways of coming up with 18, right? I mean, we could have had 9 and 9. Okay, that's cha-cha. Right? It just doesn't seem right to be, raising a glass of wine and they look at each other and say cha-cha. No, it doesn't seem to be working. Okay, so then how about, what if we did a 5?
Can you use 3 numbers?
Sure, you can do 3 numbers. You can do 6 numbers. Okay. So how if you did a 5, and then what's left?
13.
13. How would we make 13?
You do 10 and
10 and 3.
10 and 3. Okay, so 5 is the Hebrew letter Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Daled, Hey. Okay. And we need 13. And 3 is Gimel. Okay, He, Gimel. And that leaves what? How many left?
10.
Well,
10,
yeah,
which is the Yud again. So now we have Yud, we have Gimel,
okay.
and we have Hey.
Hey, Gimel.
Hey, Gimel.
Well, there was a prophet named Haggai, right? But Haggai wasn't spelled that way. In English, it would spell that way, but not in Hebrew. Guy, let's see, Ha-Guy would mean the valley.
Haggai, Haggai.
Ha-Guy would mean the valley. I'm not sure that, if we're trying to come up with a number game thing for life is, or for 18, so the Ha-Guy would mean the valley. That doesn't, come up with, what, go ahead.
Why did they pick the number 18 to mean that we should,
Well, which came first?
we did.
Which came first?
We picked the number, I don't know, 18, I thought.
Well, the word Chai came first,
Right,
because the word Chai is there meaning life.
Chai
Okay,
is life. so
and then
we
somebody
use
said, okay, so what's the numerical equivalent of Chai is
that.
18.
That was the direction. I was trying to figure out.
No, the Hebrew word existed first,
Okay.
Right, okay.
all right, in
But-
that case, okay.
I think I was told or taught or somewhere in my brain came up that it was the 18th letter of the Hebrew alphabet.
But what would be,
Hi. Like it was a letter.
Chai's not a letter,
Okay,
okay, so that
so I
wouldn't,
was wrong.
wouldn't necessarily work, wouldn't
Because
necessarily
that's
work.
what I tell
But
people.
but
when
in
they
this,
wonder
in this case,
why I donate $18.
yeah, or
And that's
why
why-
people many times, or multiples
Exactly.
of right, of 18. Now, okay, so to play the game, as it were,
Just sort of light up.
you need to remember a couple things, okay? Aleph is what? Is how much?
One.
Okay? And what else does Aleph stand for? Okay, Aleph always stands for me or I.
Oh, number one, of course.
Right, well, psychologists would say number one, okay, but whenever God is referring to God's self, all right, it's Anochi, beginning with an Aleph, okay, that's I. So in shorthand, if you will, the Aleph always stands for there's one God, right? Doesn't have to be God. It's just I or me is always an Aleph. Okay. Then either the Hey, which is 5, right? Or the Yud, which is 10. Either one of those are shorthand for God. Okay. Either 5, because Hey, anyone want to take a guess?
Okay, fine.
Is 5.
Okay. Well, Hey, what is the Hebrew letter Hey as a preposition to a word in Hebrew letter in the Hebrew language?
I never.
The. So
So
the, yeah, capital T. All right, that's one. Okay, there's one God, the God. Okay, the God, capital T.
Is that where
But-
Hashem comes from? The name?
Yes,
Hashem.
Ha, and
Hashem.
because it's always right. So it's Ha Shem, right? The name. Right.
Oh.
You don't have to say that. You don't have to say that name. It's not that name. It's the name. Right.
Yes.
Right. Okay. All right. So Hey, but it's also because Hey is shorthand for the tetragram for the 4-letter Yud Hey Vav Hey of God, which some people write as Jehovah or something like that. Okay, but Yud Hey Vav Hey, that letter. Okay. And then similarly for the yud, which is 10. Also, and we saw it in the Hebrew book today, that yud or even two yuds just stands for Adonai. When we see that, we pronounce it as Adonai. Okay. So yud in the gematria system, yud or a can, don't have to, but can stand for God. So if you're trying to make a little gematria phrase or whatever and you want God's name in there, or just the word God, you can look for a hey or look for a yud.
Yud hey vav hey, what's the numerical value of the vav?
What's yud hey vav? Well, yud hey vav is 26.
What's the vav? It's 26?
Well, no, vav is 6.
Okay.
So yud is 10.
I got you. 2 5s and 10.
Right, is 26. Okay. All right. So here's how you kind of play the game. You just let me into it.
Okay.
Right? If yud hey vav hey, that's the 4-letter God name that we never pronounce. We always say Adonai instead. Okay. All right, and that's a value of 26. Right. So yud is 10, hey is 5, right? Vav is 6,
Another 5.
and hey is another 5. So I don't know if you need a calculator for that. That's an easy one. That's an easy one. Yud hey vav hey is 26. Okay. Now you can work in either direction. You can add or you can subtract. What's the difference between 26, which is God, right? And 18, which is life. What's the difference?
8.
Okay. Can we somehow come up with some spiritual, mystical meaning with the number 8 to relate God and life?
Well, that was the shed, or the yud shed. No, that was the second. Oh, we've used 8 a few times already. When we were trying to get to pi, we used 8, good, and I wrote CHET. I don't know.
That's the Hebrew letter, yeah.
So
What did we say? Okay, so we
what is
we have that is 8.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is
So well, chet by itself doesn't mean anything. All right. The aleph, the hey, and the yud, those letters pretty much mean something by themselves, but not a chet.
okay?
So we can't use chet by itself. How would you get to 8?
5 and 3, 4 and
5 and 3, or 4 and 4, right? So 5 is
A
hey,
and
3 is aleph bet gimel, right? That's dog, which is fish. Okay, so to the Christian, that might mean something.
Eli should help. That's what the acronym is.
Yeah, right, okay. But, okay, and so, I mean, if we're talking of, what do we say? We're trying to get 8, right?
Yeah, we got hay and girl.
We got hey and gimel, so that's 5 and 3. Oh, okay, I'm sorry, that's not dot. I was doing that, okay. So 5 and 3 is gay. That's Yiddish, that doesn't work. All right, or hog, that doesn't work. So we can't do 5 and 3.
So what's a 4 and 4?
4 and 4 would be da.
Sure.
That's, I mean, that, if you want to do with English, that God is da.
Well,
Okay. All right. So keep on
6
going. So go backwards. Then
6 and 2. 6 and 2.
okay, 6 is a vav, and 2 is bet. Now, vav. okay,
I love this stuff.
right, okay, bet. Bet means in,
That was in.
bet means in, the Hebrew letter, the preposition means in. And vav means him or it. So, you know, we're going from Chai to Adonai. So Chai, God is with, or God is in it. God. See how they start to play with it? All right, you know, to make it all sense. Okay, all right. I'm not gonna bore you or challenge you. So we'll make it easy. All right. So Adonai or Yud Hey Vav Hey, 4 letters. That's 26.
Yeah.
Okay. Adam. What's Adam? Or Adam?
Yeah, so that.
Okay.
uh,
That's-
that Aleph
Aleph is 1. Dalet is Aleph Bet Gimel Dalet,
4.
right? Okay. And the mem is 40.
40.
40.
So he's 45 years old.
No, he's not 45 years old, but okay, all
You
right.
got a value of 45.
So we've got, if those are the two that we're playing with, God is, what we say, is 26.
You know.
Adam, who's the first man, right,
Mhm.
is 45. And what's the difference between
Okay.
45 and
39. Wait a minute.
No.
45 minus 26?
26. Okay, so it's 19.
19, okay. Now, play with me.
Uh,
What's the letter? The letter chet, we said was how many? No, chet is, I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
I didn't say anything.
Oh. 8, right. Chet is 8. Okay, chet is 8. Vav is Aleph Bet Gimel Dalet Hey Vav
6.
6, and Hey Hey is one. Aleph Bet Gimel Dalet Hey.
I need a 5. Okay.
So how much is a chet? Vav Hey? 19. That's Chava is, no. That's Chava, that's with an A, that's an A, not a chet. With a chet, Chava, gonna blow your mind here, folks. Chava is Eve. So if Adam is 45, okay,
She's 19.
and Eve is 19, you subtract those and you get
25.
26, which is God.
Oh,
my
my God.
Or go in the opposite direction, okay? God, start with God, and then, you know, then, okay? So you have that. And they would do that as a triangle.
Oh, my God.
They would do that, show that as a triangle. All right, so God, Adam, Eve. All right, and then they would find like 3 other things that would make a combination like that. For the other triangle, put the 2 triangles together, and you have the symbol of the Jewish star. Okay, all right. We'll do one more. Gotta bear with me, and then okay. So if you're making notes, you can make notes. All right. From last week's Torah portion, or from the Torah that we're all going to talk about on Monday. Bereshit bara Elohim et ha-shamayim et haaretz, et shamayim et haaretz. Okay, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. You want to count it up, or we just believe?
Oh, God, no.
We'll just believe you.
Okay, 2,701. From that sentence, in the beginning, in Hebrew, right? In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. 2,701. Okay. Now, how do we play with that?
Oh, God, too many combinations.
It's a simple one. Simple one.
270.
If you have the right kind of mindset. I don't. I gave up on this a long time ago, but it's fun to just share it. All right. God, Adonai, Yud Hey Vav Hey,
This is 26.
squared.
Oh, Lord.
That becomes 27
Wait a
What?
minute.
No. Is
Can't.
okay.
That's why
26 squared is 676.
26 times 26 equals 676.
676.
Okay.
All right. Adam,
It's
like we
45.
just had, was 45.
Mhm.
45 squared.
Okay,
Okay.
45 times 45 is 2025.
Now add God squared and Adam squared.
Was Eve squared?
Mhm.
Oh,
And now we need 19 squared,
right, of course.
of course.
Eve squared.
No, we don't need 9. No,
19
leave
squared.
out of it. Leave Eve.
Oh,
Eve's not in this one. Eve's not in this one. Unless we want to add her after.
Oh, so say two.
Gotta do the first one. Gotta do the first one.
For six,
So-
seven,
This
six
is
was
someone's
27
real
real.
imagination.
Let's see.
But
It's probably getting back to life, right? Yeah.
right.
That
Exactly.
adds up to 2701, just
Right.
got
That
it.
adds up to 2701, which is the first sentence of
Oh,
creation.
gosh.
Okay. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth is the same as God and Adam. Okay. Now, if we wanted to,
Include women.
we could sit here and we could figure out. Okay, we said that Eve
It's 19,
was would
19.
Does that mean?
was 19, right? Okay, was 19. So we could make it up to 2720. Make it up to 2720.
Yeah,
Okay, we wouldn't be able. We'd have to be.
No.
Well, we really can't do this. We really can't be changing the Torah text, right? Because the Torah text is there. It's right from God. But we could somehow play around with our insight. Okay, and so we're missing. Here's how they would do it. And like you picture the like in the 1600s. Picture, and they wouldn't be on Zoom. Okay, right. And we wouldn't have little cell phones around or calculators. But picture the rabbi sitting here and a group of his disciples who were all really tuned into the numbers game. And the rabbi did this whole long thing where he said, okay, 2701 is, and I showed you how it, because that's from God and that's from Adam, but we're missing Eve. Okay, we're missing 19. Well, 19, and they would forget that, we can't change the Hebrew text, but how can we find a lesson here? Well, 19 is 18 plus 1. Okay, all right. Well, 18 we know, as Amy first gave us the question. 18 is life to begin with, and Aleph is
our life,
one.
life, yeah.
Okay,
Life.
so is the lesson that the whole of creation is not complete without
Eve.
life, that one extra person to make life?
Right.
Okay, gonna add the 19, add the 1. If we add the 1 to this 2701, and then that, and then 18 is the high, that's the goal? Or is, well, without Eve, phrase it differently, without Eve, even that one person, then the creation is not the life as we expect it to be, kind of thing. And then as he would talk, he would link that into the phrase in a little bit later in the chapter of lo tov heyot adam levado. It's not good for man, for Adam, a human being, to live alone. Okay, and then work with the numbers of alone.
Oh, God.
Okay, all
Nothing
right.
about ribs,
Pardon me?
nothing about ribs.
Nothing about, that's a different
Ribs.
story. That's a different story.
No ribs.
There's two stories. There's two stories. One is that
You need to
One
help.
is that Eve is created out of Adam's rib. That's not the story that they would work with for this. The other is that they're created like that, male and female created together. Okay, so you can't really have complete life unless both are there. Okay, and that's what they would work with the Hebrew word livado. Okay, play with me. The lamed is a 30. The bet is 2, right? Okay. Dalet is 4. And Vav is 6. It says lo tov lihi adam lihi levado. It's not good for Adam to be.
Alone, but that's 42.
Okay, so what do we do? What do we do between? How do we place something with 42 compared to 19?
Well, that's what I was trying to
Okay.
figure out.
What's the difference between 42 and 19?
23,
23.
and we haven't had a 23.
Well, but yes, we have, because we can take 18, which is high. 23 is 18, which
That's
is
five.
high, leaving 5, which stands for God. So in other words, we've just added a further proof that it's not good for man to be alone without Eve and also without God.
Okay.
See, that's what this whole gematria thing
Yeah.
is all about. And it can be either fascinating or it could be very frustrating. But people who are really into the numbers game, or if you just want to just let yourself roll with it and play with it, we had first year of rabbinic school, we had a teacher. He wasn't like a regular full-time teacher. I guess you'd call it a substitute. He filled in. I forget why. It could have been that the regular teacher was called to the reserves. This is 1970, 71. And so he came in, and I was in a class of about 5 or 6 students who were already fairly fluent in Hebrew. Most of the students were not. But he came in and he said, he introduced himself and he said, I've never worked with a group of rabbinic students before, but I want you to know something that's probably not in your regular curriculum. And I want you to, but this is going to help your Hebrew vocabulary, also, and da 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 da. And he used to make us do this whole thing. So we had to come up with one, like Rabbi Norman is studying his way. No, Norman is studying his way towards becoming a rabbi in Hebrew. Okay, and we had to come up with a figure out exactly. And you can play around with the words, so that you can put in a da if you want, or you can change future tense, the past tense or present tense, whatever, if that makes a difference. But work on your Hebrew vocabulary and your grammatical structure, but with a goal of coming up with, I don't remember what mine was anymore, But but that was the kind of thing. But literally, if you pick up, I don't know whether they should be available in English somewhere. But if you pick up what the volume, or it's actually 5 volumes, that's called in Hebrew Mikraot Gedolot, which is, the word Gadol, right? Gadol is big. So Gedolot is plural. Mikraot Gedolot is great readings. Now, it's not like the Reader's Digest great books. Great readings meaning a collection of all the great interpretations, the commentaries of the Torah.
Would that be great
And-
gods?
Pardon me?
Would that be great sod being of the paradise, of the paradise?
No. No.
Oh, great,
We're
with numbers,
yeah.
okay.
So a page of that would look. I'm not an artist, but and sorry, I'll show this to you on the camera afterwards. So the text, let's say it's Bereshit bara, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. The text would be up here in really bold font, large print and whatever. And then almost exclusively, and this is a book, this is not a scroll. This is as a book. Okay. Almost exclusively in any edition of Mikraot Gedolot. Over here, next to, so this is the inside. So there's also a page over here. You got the book open, Hebrew style. Okay. So then over here is Rashi's commentary. And Rashi, because he's the most well-known, the most popular, most knowledgeable, whatever. So he's always on the inside of the page. If it was this page, he would be here.
You got it.
Okay. All right. Then,
That's what that's called.
pardon me,
That's what that's called, that inside is called the gutter.
the gutter?
Gutter.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, right. Okay, right. Yeah, where the books are, where the pages are bound together. Right, okay. Then, and I'll do one more color. Then there can be as much as 10 other commentators, some fairly well known, some not. And this is why most rabbis wear glasses or contacts or something,
Yeah.
very, very small print going down here, going all the way down to the page. Some of them may be just kind of reference point. Like I said, oh, okay, this story reminds me of a parallel story that happened in later on in the Bible, and because these are all medieval, if you will. Some of them will say, like we're talking about the number of mitzvot. There's 613 commandments in the Torah. So one of them, and it's usually right. Oops, that didn't work. It's usually right in the middle of the page. Will list which commandments or mitzvot might be in that particular text. Okay, all right. Then and any number of that have different points of view. If it were more modern, but this isn't. But if it were more modern, it would have, well, one of them's Ashkenazi, one of them's Sephardi, something like that. But they're all traditionally all different. And then I don't have another color. Okay, sorry, but usually right here, very, very small between the big bold text and over here, which is usually Ibn Ezra or Abarbanel, one of those two Spanish commentators. usually is the numbers game. One if there is, and I said, it could be this kind of Kabbalistic, what's the hidden meaning? Or let's make a hidden meaning, or it could be something like the book of Genesis contains this number of sentences, da 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 da. But then somebody would say, 2,701. Guess what? That stands for and whatever. And that's where the history of. That's what I was just scribbling, guys. That doesn't help you very much, but but that's the history of gematria and the numbers game. Okay?
Do we have that 5-volume set in our library?
No, I have one. I'm trying to remember. It's probably not.
I've seen it.
Not sure where my copy is. But I know that I spent $125 for it in 1970.
It's a lot of money.
Maybe it was
So $500
And
now.
I don't remember how much extra in oversized baggage or whatever to ship it back home, but everything's online these days. No. 5 minutes. Questions, whether it's about this or about anything. Hi, Ruth Ann. Didn't even see you.
Strange angle you're at.
It is a strange.
Yeah.
It is a strange angle.
I know.
know.
Sit up. She's in the rock. She's in the.
It's really unflattering angle.
But does anybody have a question? Whether it's about this or about anything?
She's
muted,
probably.
She's muted, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's Sunette or if it's Steve. One or the other.
Sunette.
It's Sunette? Okay.
Yeah.
This is
Awesome angle for Ruth Ann.
It is, it's very
Ruth
unflattering.
Ann, sit up straight. It's you look up that.
Okay, then if you don't have questions, then I have a question.
Okay.
So for people who are regular attendees, and I know that there are a couple who couldn't come today, but what other kinds of things? We have like 3-4 more sessions of this. And I know that 1 or 2 in November, I may have to be doing on Zoom, but that's okay. What other kinds of things or questions or things didn't get the chance to really explore it since hearing it back in Sunday school days, or aspects of a more adult oriented Jewish identity or Jewish thinking or Jewish practice?
Remember, when was the Torah written? How was it written?
Okay,
Was
that's
it written after the fact?
Oh.
I mean, because all these things
Oh, yeah,
happen
well,
in the Torah, so.
okay.
when
So
did it
quick
actually get written?
answer is none of it is eyewitness. None of it is eyewitness. Even the text in which we have it was handed down for generations orally before it was ever written down. But as far as and every time that you tell a story one way or the other, whether you've told it 15 times before, or whether you're telling it for the first time, intentionally or unintentionally, there are minor little changes here and there. And there's something exaggerated, or like I said before, sometimes you forgot one piece. Or the classic example that I use is how often the number 40 shows up in they were 40 days and 40 nights it rained for Noah, and Moses is on top of the mountain 40 days and 40 nights, and the Israelites wandered in the desert for 40 years, and on and on and on and on. But the Hebrew word for 40 is very similar to the Hebrew word for many. And so when people were hearing the story, you know, remember the game telephone or whatever, well, what did they say? Did they say 40 or did they say many? I don't know, I'm gonna guess he said 40 and, you know, and pass it through that kind of thing. So there, we don't know exactly what the original text was, and I'm saying that as a Reform rabbi. Okay? So some of the Orthodox would say, no, on the contrary, we know exactly this word for word is what was given on Mount Sinai, and all those who did pass it on orally were divinely inspired to make sure that they weren't making any mistakes, et cetera, et cetera. Having said that, I am hoping that, and I'll do my best to make sure that during the course of the next year, as we write this Torah and as we have all kinds of opportunities to study Torah and find out from the scholars what the Orthodox believe of where it came from, and what the scientists and the academics believe of where it came from, and the comparisons between this text and the text that there was just one that went up for auction that had been in India for 120 years. The Sassoon family had it, and they just went up for auction, and whatever. But that there are only like 3 in the world that had that particular text in some areas that's different than the text that we have in our Torah. Well, which one's more exact? Which one's more authentic? So, and I don't have all the answers. So those are some of the questions that I'm hoping during the course of the year we'll be able to get some satisfying answers. Yes, Rick.
I would like to, I think I have my arms somewhat around how from Torah, Talmud to Mishnah to Gemara to,
Other way, Mishnah, Gemara lead into, okay, right.
Yeah, that.
Unless you're going backwards.
Oh, hey. But, maybe go through a lesson on how it went from, how the
Sure.
Torah to the Mishnah to the Gemara.
Okay,
and
sure.
stuff.
Do that next week. We can do that next week. We'll take 1 or 2 examples. Everything has to start with Torah,
Right, exactly.
okay? And then, right, and then how it moves forward,
Now, because there's, when you were drawing that,
right?
did that remind me of the Mishnah or the Gemara?
Depends on which
No,
edition
because
you're
we're
looking for.
there,
No, this
text
is a similar, a page of Talmud
is.
is very similar, okay? With the text,
Yeah.
except in Talmud, usually the text
It's in the center.
is in the center of the commentary, is all around, right.
And is the Gemara then taken, is it broken down further on the page when they have the Gemara, is the Gemara separate, totally separate?
No, Mishnah and Gemara would be printed together in the same font.
Mhm.
In the same font, and it would just identify where the Mishnah quote starts and ends,
Thanks, Rabbi.
and where the Gemara quote starts and ends. But they would be in the same font. Again, no vowels, so Hebrew students are going to be in trouble. And it's actually Aramaic, not Hebrew anyway. All right. But that, and then all the different commentaries, all around.
Because that evolution, if you want, is always interesting to me.
Right.
So that's what I'd like you to. talk
Right,
about.
okay, yeah, of how it goes. So it starts with a quotation or a particular law or incident in the Torah, and then how it goes through the whole thing. Okay, we can do that next week.